Alright, we're back. We've got everything nice and dry. Now, what I want to do, even though we still have one more petal to go, I want to get those lines out of there because I don't want to add any more paint. It will be really difficult, and we're really not going to leave this line any longer. So yeah, if we wait any longer and apply more paint before we take the lines off, they'll be really, really difficult to get rid of. So you want to do it now. I'm just putting enough pressure that I need to get those lines off of there. Being such a light colored flower, I wanted to be sure and get those lines off of there now. Get it damp. And just gently, I'm going to use my and I'm just wiping it off in between because I don't want to reapply the paint that I've just lifted off. Here we go. And do the same thing down here. Help soften this edge. Just re-dampening my eradicator. Because if your eradicator is completely dry, all you're doing is scrubbing the paper. And that's not what you want to do, believe me. Just going to soften that in. I'm just using my number 6 and a little bit of paint. And I don't want it to dry in a hard line, so I'm just giving it a place to go with water. I like that better. Let me show you on the picture. So we're going to do this petal. We're going to do it wet on wet. And again, since this is the first time that I'm adding water to this area of the paper, we will be doing it twice. So we're going to let it soak up. And then we'll add in some more. And you always want to check the side of your paper and make sure you got your whole area covered. Okay, so we got our water in. Now our lightest area, it's kind of bizarre, is in here. So we're going to put the lightest color in there first. Add a little bit of water to my paint, stir it up. And I say that's bizarre because normally this would be the darkest area, but it's just the way the light shines onto a specific plant like this. Put some water on my paper. I want to get that out of there. And this does come up pretty high. And again, you want to let your water do the most of the work. You just want to make sure it gets to the edges. Now we're going to go down to the darker color. And add that in up here. It's kind of a combination between the light and the medium. But it is darker than the light, so... I'm going to run that right down here a little bit. Now it looks like I've got paint collecting at the bottom, so I'm going to clean my brush and wipe it off and use it as a sponge. Pick up that puddle. There we go. I'm going to just flick those two colors together. So that they blend well. Okay, now we're going to stay with the same value as we come around this petal here. And then it gets a little darker up in here, so we're going to add a little bit more dark. Just adding a little bit of water to my paint on my palette. I'm going to turn this just a little bit so I can get at it a little bit easier. And you want to do that too. Make your life a lot easier as you're painting. And I'm going to turn it again. I want to make sure that you can see me. There we go. So I want to get right into this area. A lot of water on there. Okay, now there is a little bit of pink right at the tip. And all this is our Opera Rose. Turned out to be the perfect color for this. I'm just going to drop it in. It's going to come out much darker than there because that one is not really mixed in with the yellow at all. It's just the straight red or Opera Rose, which I'm going to put a little bit bolder red there too. Okay, now since we're going to do the background, I've set the painting aside. I've got our picture out here and a little jar that we're going to, with just a little bit of water and blending and glazing medium in it. And we're going to create our background color, which is going to be very dark. So we're going to start, and we're going to keep this right off of the palette so we're not using all the paint in the palette. So that was French Ultramarine. Got quite a bit in there. We're going to need a lot, so. Now this is a very dark phthalo cyan blue. It's a very dark color, so you want to be cautious. This one we're just going to put like the size of a pea in it. About like that. Alright, now Sentinel Yellow Deep. And that one we're going to need a lot of too. There we go. Now this is going to be a great green that we can use for many projects, so it's kind of nice to mix up enough that you've got it. I'm going to hang on to the lemon yellow. We may need that, we may not. But to have some mixed up like this is a blue Sentinel. We don't need that in this mix. And then take your mixing brush. And I am going to get it wet with the clean water. I'm hoping you can see this. I think you can. We're creating that dark background. And then what's nice, when we do go to paint the leaves, they're all lighter than this. This will be the dark value on the leaves, but then the lighter value we can just add the yellow to it, lemon yellow or whatever we may choose to do at that point. And I'm going to set this down for a moment, and I'm going to add some more water to this with the blending and glazing medium in it. Just felt a little thick. Get everything off the sides. It's just a little plastic jar or acrylic jar that I picked up at Walmart. Got about 5 of them here. I keep my water in it, and for when we're doing the wet on wet technique. And now you want to do this away from your painting so you don't get any spillage by mistake on your paintings. That's why I had set my painting aside. Now I got a feeling this is not going to be dark enough, but and we're going to test this green just to see. Maybe it will be dark enough. Yeah, I think we're pretty much dead on what we want here. Just like that. Okay, so we're going to set that aside because that's awfully wet. And now what I'm going to do is I am going to use a 3/4 inch angled brush. Holds a lot of paint. I'm not going to put water on the background. We're just going to put the paint on the background. Now this is going to be one solid color on the background, so there's not going to be, and we may have to do this 2, 3, 4 times just to get that background as dark as we would like it, but that's okay. Yeah, that's going to be a pretty color. And see why I like this angled brush? It gets me right into those corners the way I need to. This goes all the way down. This will be interesting to see how this rough paper handles this. And we are definitely going to do another layer. It's not too bad, and I had covered up this side. Let me show you. You've got your bulb, and then you've got your leaf that's behind here, and I had covered that up, so I removed it. I smoothed this out a little bit for here, and then I did smooth this out a little bit. So all I did was use it like an eradicator and softly pat it away with your paper towel, and it worked perfect. Okay, so now what we're going to do is we're going to finish this portion of the flower, and then we'll continue on our background. We forgot to do that. I should say I forgot to do that. So we're going to do that first, which means we're going to do the pink first on those petals. A little bit difficult to see, but that's okay, we'll get it. So I am going to, this is dry radial, do the wet on wet. Even though it's a small area, it is the pink area. So I don't want it to be so dark pink that it takes over the whole design here. So this whole area here is going to be wet on wet. Although since it is so small, we won't have to do 2 layers. And I am going to drop down to a number 4 brush. So that area is pink. All the way up here is pink. And then we've got another area up here that is also pink. Now, since the yellow is so close to this last petal, I am going to, well, there's one more pink area right in here. We can do this wet on dry, like that. Looks like I might have gotten too much pink down in this area, so I'm going to lift some of that off. And all I did was clean my brush, wipe it on my baby diaper, dry it off, and then pick it up. Yeah, that looks better. Okay, now our wet into wet technique for the leaves. So let's start with my water glaze. We're going to start with this bud up here. And the stem. Whenever you have a stem like this, you always want to, at least if you're not going to paint the stem right away, at least run water down to the next item so that it doesn't have a harsh line. I'm going to start with the number 6. And we're going to go with the lightest color first, which is the dark value plus lemon yellow, and then a lot of lemon yellow, and then the mid value will be the same colors except a little less lemon yellow. But we're going to fill this whole thing in first with the lemony green here. And I'm going to run this color right down the stem as well. Okay, now we're going to go to the next darker value. I'm going to drop some of that in right at the base of the bud. It's picking up more color, more paint. Okay. I'm going to run this right down the right side of the stem. And let it do its thing with the water and blend to the lighter color. Pick up some more of that. Needs it over here a little bit. Okay. Making sure I got all my there we go. Alright, now this leaf is actually behind the stem. So I'm going to take my glazing brush and fill in both the leaf and the stem. And we're going to go right down to the next leaf with the water. Add in our second glaze of water. So we know we've got enough in there not to run out. Okay. I'm going to mix just a little bit more of the lighter value here. Definitely want to use that for the stem. We're going to just do the stem for right now. Okay. Now I am going to pick up the darker value. I'm going to start that back here with this leaf. And we're going to continue with the glazing of the water and the blending. Pick up the light color first. And then the second dark. Again, this is just the wet into wet. Gonna let the water do its thing. And don't forget, this all lightens up as it dries. Now on that stem, there's a little bit of the red. So while this is still wet, we'll drop that in too. Had too much water on my brush, so I blotted it off. And that'll help separate that stem from the leaves too. I'm going to add some dark into this lower stem. Okay. I'm going to dry that because then we're going to move on to the other leaves, but I don't want to get my hand in it. So I'll be right back with you.